Hey friends, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about the importance of decentralized and localized food production as a solution to many of the problems we face in the world. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to get all of our latest content. I need to update it, but for the most part, it's pretty updated. You can get articles, videos, essays, find out about our Divest from Facebook campaign, which we've been pushing all this month of May as we partner with Minds, and I invite you guys to follow us on minds.com or Steam it, join our Discord channel, sign up for the text list so you can get text updates right to your phone instead of relying on YouTube or any of the other platforms to notify you. But let's get into this. I want to talk about localized food production, about urban farming, about community gardens, about decentralized agriculture. And why is this something that's important to me? Why are we thinking about this? Well, many of you are aware of movements like March Against Monsanto, raising awareness about the corporatist practices of the business known as Monsanto, as well as their chemicals like glyphosate being linked to cancer and causing problems with the soil and the environment and the bees and all these kinds of things. Not to mention the problems of monocropping, which is not only heavily invasive but can be destructive and can lead to erosion and can lead to all kinds of different problems going on in our environment that we have learned over the last couple hundred years as humanity has started to question the fact that we use this mass agriculture system. And not only that, but in the city environment, people are now starting to think about what does urban farming look like. I'm here in the city of Houston, and for years, for about 5 years, I was involved in a community garden called the Last Organic Outpost. And there's dozens of videos of myself and other Houston freethinkers working at the Last Organic Outpost and building garden beds and connecting with people. And what I saw taught me a lot about community. For one, I realized that when you have a garden, you have a community. I mean, you can build community around it. This particular place, this is the Emile Street Farm, or the Last Organic Outpost, that was in the 5th Ward of Houston, in one of the poorest parts of town, not far from where I live. And it really just blossomed into this community center where we would have music and we would have garden days, and there would be all kinds of people out there just growing food. We got involved in aquaponics and hugelkulture, and there was what's it called, bees. There was just so much going on. They would have schools there where they would just have all kinds of things going on, and just thousands and thousands of pounds of food being grown there. I mean, it's just really like a paradise, and again, one of the poorest neighborhoods of Houston. And I was so thrilled to be a part of that and to make that a part of my activism and to just to be involved there. And so, as I said, it taught me a lot about the fact that, for one, if you have a garden space and you bring food and you bring music, well, then you've got community. People want to come together. They want to come hear the music. They want to come enjoy the food. They want to come get involved in the community garden and, just be there at the place. Here's a benefit show we threw there at the community garden way back in the day. You can find some old videos that I put together of us just being involved there, intending to the garden, having our own garden space, learning about growing food, and learning about building community. Now, this is the solution to the problems with Monsanto and these other corporations with this mass food production system, which, again, if you are concerned about statism or you're concerned about authoritarianism, you look further into the factory farming system, the industrial farming system. In a lot of instances, these farmers are taking subsidies from the government. So the whole system is arranged via statism and is dependent on statism and money coming from the taxpayers. So that's one problem you could take from it. But also there's the environmental cost and the wasteful cost, the fact that it has to be shipped tens and thousands of miles away, as opposed to just being, right here in your backyard. For example, that community garden I was involved in was just always a bike ride away, and the old Freethinker house where I used to live, there's still a community garden there, and that's just a bike ride away to some fresh greens and some fresh foods that are being grown right here in the community without pesticides. And I've also gone to Detroit a few years back. In 2014, I did some journalism work out there in Detroit on the urban farming explosion. So by being involved in localized food production, you reduce the impact that your diet has. You reduce the amount of time and energy and cost that comes with growing food, because it's it doesn't have to be shipped 10,000 miles away and be driven by giant trucks and packaged sometimes in plastic and other things, just to get to your grocery store and then to get to your plate. So by having local farming, you give more people more options, because not everybody will get involved in the garden, which I recommend each of you guys do. If I could give you one sort of suggestion, it would be just to start learning about community gardens in your area, and even just putting one weekend or a couple hours a weekend and one day a week, and to see what you get out of that. You're going to get knowledge, you're going to get connected to the earth, you're going to get your hands in the soil, and you're going to learn more about growing food. And that's a beautiful thing. So you're getting more connected to the earth on a physical manner, in a spiritual manner, and in a very practical way. You are learning skills about growing your own food, and then you get to take some of that produce home. And often what I've found out is sometimes people, when you're growing all these different foods, because we're so dependent on the grocery stores or fast foods or whatever, a lot of times people don't even know what to do with the food because they never heard of it. Like, what is Swiss chard and how do I cook it? Well, that's part of the fun of like learning different foods and just figuring out your diet and figuring out recipes. And at least for me, that was the beauty of it, is like taking the seed, putting it into the soil, tending to it, taking care of it as a community, weeding it, and then figuring out new ways to grow food. And then from there, being able to pick it, harvest it, and take it home and cook it for friends and what have you, and to see all the different ways that people just experiment with urban farming, urban gardening. But again, even if you're not the one who's going to do that, well, let's say you participate in farmers markets. Well, you get involved at a farmers market, then you're going to be supporting the local farmers instead of supporting the big business stores and supporting the industrial farming that's using Monsanto products and other chemicals and harming the bees and harming the environment and harming the soil and harming the water and ultimately harming you and your family. So you can support localization, you can support decentralization, you can support your local community, you can get skills, and that is a decentralized solution to moving away from the more centralized system of food production. I want to show you guys a couple of articles that I pulled up that I will link below that I think you guys can get into. It says examining the need for a decentralized food system. And I'm not going to read it to you. I'm just going to link it below. And he's kind of going over some of the points of the short-sightedness of the current food system, and just how this could change and what a decentralized food system looks like. He describes it as environmentally responsible. As I said, the food travels shorter distances. The use of monoculture crops decline, conserving arable land. It's cost-effective. It's community-oriented. It's accessible. It's resilient. So some good parts of this. And this is actually a two-part of a 3-series on the future of food, which you can maybe get into if you want to. I also found this one. It's a look at the future of decentralized food and some ideas on that. If it will load. Oh, here we go. From Walden Labs, the future of decentralized food production. In the future, every individual will once again be closely involved in their food production. People will either grow and forage for the food themselves or know the person who does. I'm certain of it because it's just a better and more resilient system for survival and lasting happiness. And this includes a video with permaculture teacher Geoff Lawton that you can look into. And it talks about how within 60 square meters or 640 square feet of garden space, in his permaculture garden, he has 80 medicinal plants, 30 fruit trees, 20 varieties of berries, vertical growing space, and annual yields of 70 kilograms of veggies and 160 kilograms of fruit. So, and then they talk about the economic benefits, of course, and they go a little bit further. They talk about the Bill Mollison, who's the founder of permaculture. And this, to me, is the big part of permaculture that I've been hearing more about, is people are talking about not just sustainable systems, but regenerative systems, where you have food production systems and activism and just connecting to each other, community systems that are regenerative, that they empower the local community, not just sustain it to where it's at, but help regenerate it and build it up better than we found it. And this right here is from communitywealth.org, and it's a little overview of local food systems and different ways that they work together, from eaters to food cultivation, food hubs. And again, I think a lot of this is really interesting information for those of you who want to study and understand how food travels and the way that we get our food and all of that. That's important because, again, not only as an anarchist or just as somebody who's against the government being involved in our practices and being dependent on that, then you should know that the mainstream system is very heavily subsidized by the state. So the more that we participate in local food distribution systems, again, whether growing, volunteering, or just buying from farmers markets, that and getting to know the farmer, then the more we are pulling away from those centralized systems. This one is from Local Food Shift, and it says food localization as economic development. And it talks about some progress made in Boulder County. And it says, while localizing our food supply may well be the most important and most effective thing we can do for our environment, our health, and our communities, perhaps the most compelling reason for food localization is economic development. And it goes on to describe how economic development is spurred by more development of community gardens and urban farming and just food growing. You know, whether you're talking about food forests or more people being involved in even food foraging, like you're encouraging participation in the local environment and the local community as opposed to that decentralized community that we have described. Now, I have talked about permaculture previously in some of my talks, and as you guys recently, I'm moving more and more in that direction. I plan on taking a permaculture design course fairly soon and just learning more about practice on hands after witnessing the beauty of permaculture at places like Punta Mona and elsewhere. And in fact, I interviewed my buddy Eric McCool, who came up with the phrase Permagora, which is the synthesis of permaculture and agorism. And we did this interview back in 2016. You can check it out. I think you guys will find it informative. And then I actually wrote a chapter in my book, Manifesto of the Free Humans, about Permagora. And you can read the book right here, which I put on the website, or you can download and purchase the book and read the chapter yourself on Permagora and how the two philosophies of agorism and counter economics and opting out of the system come together and really complement each other when it comes to permaculture. Now, I also want to show you guys freedomcells.org, and remind you, the website is built, and the concept of freedom cells, whether you use the website or not, or just start building them locally, the whole goal is decentralization, localization, empowerment. You know, Freedom Cell, mutual aid group, a hub, freedom hub, whatever you want to call it, could be used for any number of reasons. That could include a freedom hub, a freedom cell that focuses on local agriculture and getting involved in community gardens and, you know, guerrilla gardening or reclaiming lots in your city and your town that are not going to use and making them garden space. And we have lots of videos on here that explain freedom cells further if you're just now hearing me talk about this for the first time. And please do try to sign up for the website. I know some of you guys tell me that there are problems signing up for the website. Unfortunately, I'm not the one who built it. A friend, an ally built it for me, and I have been on them. So if you're having problems, I'm working on it, I promise you. But learn all about the concept. Whether you use the website or not, try to find people in your area, try to connect with your friends, and use this as a method to spreading the message of permaculture and agorism and decentralized, localized food production, which can benefit you economically, which benefits your health, it benefits your local community, and it also benefits the environment. To me, this is the solution to getting away from that centralized food production system. And also, you guys have heard me talk about holistic anarchism and holistic activism and thinking about holistically. When you think holistically, the type of food you're eating as well as the source of the food is a big source of concern. You know, we need to take these things into consideration. And once you start to do that, you might start to question the source of your food, again, as well as the type of food you're eating, but definitely the source of your food and where it's coming from and what are the processes involved in that. And once you do that, it's really difficult to just keep going to the grocery store, especially when you go somewhere where you see permaculture in action, you see people thriving and growing their own food and being off the centralized grid. It's harder to go to the grocery store and keep being dependent on these systems, especially if you've ever been in a situation like I have been here in Houston when we have hurricanes and you see the grocery stores empty out in minutes and hours. People are just freaking out, and everything, the shit hits the fan and people start taking and buying what they can, and it can get even worse than that. And so when you have no backyard gardens, front yard gardens, urban gardens, community gardens, rooftop gardens, vertical gardens, farmers markets, foraging, food forests, all these concepts, when they don't exist, the people are completely dependent on the grocery store. And you see what happens when governments collapses, whether that means economic, collapse, or the state services are no longer offered to the people, or just what have you, weather emergencies, people freak out and supplies run out very quickly. And unless you've got a stockpile of food, which is a good idea for a freedom cell to think about, then you want to make sure you have local food in your area. Now, of course, those farms and gardens will get raided probably pretty quickly. But again, a community that has localized food production is going to be a lot better off than a community that doesn't. So if you've never considered these ideas, you've never gotten involved in community garden, localized food production, starting a windowsill garden, or a backyard garden, a front yard garden, or just a small little square foot garden in your yard, or getting involved in the community farmers market or community garden or some sort of community supported agriculture, I highly encourage you guys to do so. And again, this is where the solutions lie. This is where we can actually take effect and change. These are the non-political solutions that I've talked about for so long, but they take action. It takes doing more than just sitting behind a screen and listening. You have to be moved enough to say, I'm going to do something about this. I'm not just going to sit here and watch. I'm going to take action in my life and achieve change. And I'm going to do it now, because otherwise I might not have the opportunity later. And also, the more proactive and the more active you are now, the less reactionary you have to be later, and the more opportunity for your family to survive and thrive. So that's where we're going to leave it for now, guys. I appreciate you listening. Please do bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. Check out the links I'm going to put in the description below. Read those essays. Check out Permagora. Check out Freedom Cells. And until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.